The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders from their headquarters in Tarzana, California. I'm thrilled to be here with you today. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism and how you and I can be more effective, more efficient, working on a team, trying to help a child on the autism spectrum to reach their fullest potential. Whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a practitioner, I know that that's something that's really important to you, and I know that because I am a parent of a child who is on the autism spectrum, and it's something that fills pretty much my waking hours, how to be more effective, how to be more efficient, how to show up for him so that he can reach his fullest potential. I always say I want to be able to look him in the eye when he's 18 and walking across the stage to get his high school diploma, and to be able to say to him, you know, we did everything that we could, and be confident that that's true. And that's something that's really, really important to me. It's also really important to me to help other people along the way because people helped us. And so it's my great, I so appreciate it. I have so much gratitude for being able to be here and hopefully to be of use to you on your journey. I like to say if I can save you $5 in 5 minutes, well, you know, that's a great thing for a day's work. And of course, I'd love to save you more time and more money than that. And I hope that you'll join me in that quest by sharing the information that you have and asking questions that help not only you, but help other people as they're listening, because that's really what it's about. We want to help each other to make the progress. All of our kids are different. The outcomes are going to be different. The speed of the progress is going to be different. The amount of progress, it's going to be different. We know that. I think that we're all aware of that, but it doesn't change the fact that our kids are entitled to it, as much progress as they possibly can. And if you watch the show, you know I get upset when I think that anybody is saying, oh, well, it isn't worth it to make this amount of progress. Oh, yes, it is. When you look into the eyes of a child, yes, it is worth it. All progress is worth it. So we are in the business here of hooking you up with what you need to be hooked up with, whether it's an answer or a question, or just you need somebody to talk to, somebody to shore you up on this journey. There are a lot of us here who at least have an understanding and want to be helpful and useful. So how can you let us know what you need? That's the biggest question, right? The lots of different ways in which you can do that. If you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, then you will see on the screen there's a box that has my head, my talking head, and next to it there's an empty box right now that says Shannon is answering above it. And when it says that, it means we're live, and you can type in whatever you would like. You can send me a question, a suggestion, a complaint, you know, whatever it is that you want to converse with me about, you can send it, hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on my screen. By the way, you don't have to log in. There's no charge. There's no fee. We're not looking for your email address. Nobody's going to spam you. Write in, and it shows up magically here. And you and I can have a conversation, and you can have a conversation with experts that we have on the show. So a pretty sweet thing. Now, if you're not watching us on autism-live, Live, or you're watching and it says rebroadcast, there are still ways that you can get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And I know a lot of you need to watch the show recorded or when it's in rebroadcast. So please take advantage. Email us. Whatever we're doing in the show, pretend that it's live and email us. It's just going to be a little bit of a delayed gratification before we get back to you. But we will get back to you, and sometimes it takes a couple of days. I know right now I'm working on 2 different things for people that have written in, because I'm conversing with experts and trying to get back to you with good answers, and may even have other people get back to you who know more than I do, because I'm not the expert. I'm just the wire running between things, right? But I want to hook you up with the things that you need to know. So email us wherever you are, whatever time of day or night. Email us. We love to get your emails. Love to know what's working for you, what isn't working for you. You can also phone us. Our phone line is working, and you can give us a call. We can patch you right into the studio, or we can talk to you after the show. So please be in a conversation with us. You can Skype with us as well. So those of you who really anywhere, but including internationally, you can Skype with us right on the show. If you got camera on your computer, we can be right next to each other talking, and it's really very enjoyable. You can also participate with us on Facebook. We're going to give you the question of the day here in a minute, but it's already up on Facebook if you want to take a look at it and give your answer to the question of the day. I think it's a really important part of the conversation, because you guys share information that drives what we do here, but you also uplift each other. It's a really wonderful thing. I love what you guys do on Facebook. And of course, you can tweet with us. All those different ways that you can be in touch with us. And there are lots of different ways in which you could be watching us. Watch us on Autism-Live for when you want to see live shows, or when you just want to see what's happening, because we show the live show 2 hours a day, and then we will rebroadcast the most recent episodes that you can tune in and kind of catch up with what's happening. But if there's something specific you need, we got a couple of places you can go to find exactly what you need, and be able to pause it, rewind, fast forward, say, I didn't quite catch that. Let's look at that again. So you can do that on Blip TV. Leave your comments and questions there as well. But it's just like having a DVR for this show, and it's free. Blip.tv. You can also do that on our YouTube channel. Really user-friendly way to do that. And you can also share what you see when you watch it on YouTube. And you can also download us for free on iTunes. So all of these different ways, free to you. Please take the information. That's what we're here for, is to give information and have you use it in the way that best suits you. But be a part of the conversation. Tell us what you need to know. All right. We like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take one word, one phrase, one anagram, and try to figure out what it means. And I mentioned before, I'm an autism parent. I have a son who is now 9. He was diagnosed at 2.5. And I always like to remind you guys, before we get into some of the different aspects of the things that we talk about, I am not an expert in autism. I am not an expert in ABA therapy. I am not a lawyer, a nutritionist. I am not an expert advocate, but I have been on this road for a while, and I want to help you. So this is about hooking you up with information, but please know I'm not claiming to be an expert, because I am not. And I learn on a daily basis. I always say, sometimes I think that I'm an expert in my child, and then the universe proves me wrong. As soon as I think that, I'm in trouble. But I'm sure that you feel this way too. Along this way, you have to get educated. You have to learn a new way of speaking that involves this jargon. You have to make friends with it. And there's a whole lot of other things that you're going to learn along the way that weren't in your playbook. You weren't sitting there thinking, hey, I really want to know everything about, and fill in the blank, because there's so much to know about, right? But if that's, at some point you think to yourself, well, if that's what's going to make me efficient and effective working with my kid, I guess I'm going to suck it up and do it. So that's what we do with the jargon. We suck it up. We learn what these things mean. We kind of get a grip on them. But we do it in a user-friendly way. One word, one phrase, one anagram at a time, so we don't get overwhelmed by it. Because I don't know about you, I've been overwhelmed enough in my life. I'd like to move into the phase where I'm no longer overwhelmed on a regular basis. Okay, so today's term is prompt fading. We talk about prompts a lot. And in the coming days, we're going to be defining lots of different kinds of prompts. But one thing that's important is knowing that the whole idea with prompts is that we want to fade them as quickly as we can and be effective. So let's take a look at what the actual definition of prompt fading is. Gradually reducing the level of prompting provided across learning trials until a prompt is no longer given. All right, let's move on to what our working definition is: providing less and less of a prompt until the child can do the skill independently. So you might be thinking to yourself, all right, what's a prompt? A prompt is anything that we do to facilitate getting the right answer. So imagine, and you do this all the time, and you just probably don't call it a prompt. Imagine that you say to somebody, hand me that thing over there. And they kind of look and they go, which thing? And you point to it. That's a prompt. You're helping them out. It's something that you're doing to facilitate having the right action take place. So if we do physical prompts, if we say to the child, pick that up, and the child doesn't, one of the things that we can do is gently, we're not manhandling anybody, take their hand and put it down and close their fist over it and bring it back up. We're physically prompting them to do that. If we're, when children do the spaghetti legs thing, that's what I call it. I got a friend who calls it the Gandhi maneuver. You're taking them someplace and they just decide to do civil disobedience and they lay down on the ground and we pick them up. Right? Now, if we're picking them up and sometimes you pick up the child and you're trying to get their legs to move, then you're prompting them. You're prompting them to do something. If I say to a child, I say bear, and the child's not doing it, and I say that's a prompt, right? I'm giving them something extra to encourage them to do it. But I always want to be mindful of, I want to give the least intrusive prompt, right? But I want it to be the most effective prompt. So let's say that I'm trying to teach a child how to say oscillating sprinkler. Right? Really, really hard to do that, right? And I say to the child, say oscillating sprinkler. Well, the child can't do it. So I'm going to break it down into little itty bits, right? And I'm going to see if they can say os, right? So I'm going to prompt them and I'm going to say os, os, os. That's a prompt, right? I might hold up a card that says os on it. That's a textural prompt, right? I might even physically, very gently go to the child and put their mouth in a position so that they can say ah. I might do this to them, all right? That's a physical prompt. Lots of different things that I can do with the prompt, but some of them are really intrusive, like touching somebody's face and saying, I say ah. It's kind of intrusive, right? It's not the most favorite thing, and we need to get to the point where the child can do it on their own. So very quickly, we want to do less and less and less. And so, if I'm physically prompting a child to do something, I say pick up that toy, and the first time I got to do a full physical prompt, and I got to not only bring their arm over to it, but I got to hand over hand do a claw grip so that they pick it up. And that's really intrusive prompt. And I want to do less and less until I get to the point where I say pick it up and the child picks it up. So maybe the second time, the first time, I say pick it up and I do this, and as soon as I do it and I prompt it and I go, good, that's good picking up, right? I got to give that reinforcement. But now the next time I'm going to say, I'm going to put the toy right back and say, pick it up. And if the child makes no motion, I'm going to go over and take the hand again and lead it over. But maybe this time I'm going to pause to see if they're going to do the claw grip before I do. I might even put my hand over it, but see if they move their hands. And now I'm going to reinforce more. That's really good. That's really good. And then I put the toy back and I say, pick it up. And now maybe I wait a second and maybe I just take my hand and do this. So the child's doing more and more of it themselves. And maybe the next time I say, pick it up, and I just do my finger close as if I'm going to do it, but they already know what I want, and then I'm going to reinforce it. And so eventually, maybe on the 5th trial, I say pick it up, maybe the child does it completely by themselves that time. Or maybe it takes me prompting them 100 more times, with different things. But the point is that I want to keep fading it. I want to do a teeny little bit less each time, because what I'm promoting is for the child to be able to do it themselves. The prompt is just the thing that helps them to get to the reinforcement. It's just added little thing that I'm going to do that's going to encourage the right answer. We prompt all the time, right? And everything that we do with our coworkers, with our significant others, with our kids that aren't on the spectrum, we prompt all of the time. We just don't call it that. But we have to be really mindful of it with our kids on the autism spectrum. We're going to prompt them to do things, and we're going to have a mindful experience and fade that prompt as fast as we possibly can. What happens when you fade the prompt too fast? The behavior doesn't happen, right? And when the behavior doesn't happen, the desired behavior, what you always do is you go back to the last effective prompt. So you don't start over. If I was doing it hand over hand and doing all that, and I finally got to the point where I just did this and the child did it, right? And the next time I think I'm just not going to do anything, and I say to the child, pick it up, and they don't do anything, I go back to the last effective prompt, which was this. Right? If that doesn't work, I go to the last effective prompt before that. So you just kind of work backwards. Once you hear it, it makes a certain amount of sense, but I'll tell you what, I shouldn't know about this when my child was diagnosed with autism, and it's really effective. Prompting and fading your prompts and doing the last effective prompt when it doesn't work. That's what tells you, you've gone just a little too fast, and you go back. Okay, that's prompt fading. We always have a question of the day for you. The question of the day is meant to get you thinking, participating, and hopefully interacting with each other and interacting with us. So today, you ready? Because we've been talking about money all this week. What therapy would you be doing if money were not an issue? Ooh, right? So I know for most parents that have been on this journey for a while, you got a laundry list of things that you want to do next. And there's always the consideration of, okay, who's paying for this, and what can we afford, and who will fund what, and all those different things. But if money were not an issue, what would you do next? What would you be doing right now? And I know for a lot of you, having an intensive ABA therapy program in your home is at the top of that list. And I got to tell you, I think you're right to have it at the top of your list. I've shared before on the show that we were incredibly lucky, and I'm incredibly grateful for the fact that the great state of California paid for my son's therapy. The lion share of it. Really very incredible. And now we have insurance reform, and insurance reform is going to largely take the place of that just in time, because the state of California doesn't have any more money anymore. It's terrible to me that money can be the difference between whether a child on the spectrum can speak, whether a child on the spectrum can make eye contact, whether they can be friends with someone, because we know that ABA works. We know that it can get it done. We know the progress is going to be different for all kids, but they're all going to see progress. So, but let's dream a little bit. Let's imagine. I'm a big believer in, you got to know what you want before it can show up, right? So if money were not an issue, what kind of therapy would you be doing? And we'll check in with you guys later on, not only for this question, but yesterday's question. We had so many questions yesterday and a great guest yesterday. We didn't get to the question of the day, the answers to it. Okay, so we always have a topic, the topic of the day, which is really the topic of the week. And of course, I've given it away, but we're talking about funding this week. We're talking about how do you make this money component of it make sense and work in a way that you're not homeless or destitute or, completely overwhelmed. Well, we're going to be overwhelmed no matter what, but how can we make it work? That's what we want to talk about. How do we make it work? And we are going to talk about that today and every day this week, because the money is a part of it. And for people who say that it's not, I don't know what parallel universe they're living in, but not the same one that you and I are in, right? So we have to talk about the funding. We have to. All right, and some of the different things that we're going to talk about today, we've got a language tip coming up for you. We have a healthy eating tip, in which, I'm introducing a new segment. I think we're going to call it How Stupid Do I Look? Because there's been some, I mentioned this the other day, there's some research that came out about organic food last week, and I swear the top of my head is like come off and is flying around the room because it's so ridiculous. And then, of course, we're going to do some looking at your answers to the question of the day, both today and yesterday. I don't even know that we got to it on Friday. And you guys have written in some really amazing things. So we're going to do all that and more. Stick with us, and we're interested in your questions. Ask them starting right now. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're webcasting to you from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's time for our language tip of the week, and today we're talking about being as effective as we can in teaching any kind of receptive language. And this is one of those things that we talk about from time to time, how important it is. Receptive language, first of all, is when our children are hearing something and understanding it. We always talk about expressive and receptive language because they're really two different sides of a coin, and what we can see a lot of the times with a child on the autism spectrum is that they don't necessarily match their skill levels where they're at. So a child can be very high in expressive language, and they're speaking and people are understanding them and they're communicating in that respect, but when somebody says something to them, that their receptive language is not as high as their expressive language, and they're having trouble responding and understanding what's being said to them. And the flip can be true as well, that a child can have virtually no expressive language but be very high in receptive language. We've seen that case many times in autism, where I think we've all been in the experience where we say, I don't know how much my child is understanding, right? And because they're not expressing it, but then sometimes something happens and you realize, they are listening and understanding and hearing more than I thought they were. But we always want to build both skills. Why not? And today we're going to focus on building those receptive language skills. So a couple of things that we want to be mindful of. And the first thing that I have up there is KISS. You know this, this phrase? It stands for keep it simple, and I don't like the word that they use, so I'm going to say keep it simple, silly. I don't know about you, but I am somebody who loves words and takes way too many words to say anything at all. I just want to say 1,000 words, just like I just did in this example. We want to edit that down and make it as simple as possible. I love Evelyn Gould, who's a BCBA who joins us usually on Wednesdays, always uses the example of, let's imagine that we're going to Russia and we know no Russian whatsoever, but we want to immerse ourselves in the language and we want to learn Russian. Well, we will learn Russian that much quicker the fewer words that somebody says in relation to the thing that they're doing. The example that she told me that I just went, oh, I get it, was that if I'm staying in a home in Russia and somebody comes up to me in the bedroom and is talking to me in a torrent of words, and what they're saying is, I want you to come downstairs because I've just made a bowl of soup for you and you're really going to love it and you're probably hungry after everything that you've been through. Oh, this is something I would do. And we're standing in the bedroom. So there's all these Russian words come out and I have no idea. It's clear to me that they're asking me to do something, but I have no idea what they're asking me to do. Whereas if the Russian woman was to take me by the hand and very nicely bring me downstairs to the kitchen and gesture for me to sit down at the table and point to a bowl of soup, make a gesture and say one word, and say the Russian word for eat, I might be a little confused because I might think, is she saying spoon, is she saying soup, or is she saying eat? But if she keeps repeating it, and the next time she does it and there's a peach sitting there instead of a bowl of soup, and she uses the same word that I heard when she said with the soup spoon, then I'm going to start to put it together much faster. So when we use too many words, we leave room for the child to have him pick and choose and put together and say, which one of these words does this mean? So we want to keep it simple. Keep it as simple, use as few words as possible. It's why when we're teaching compliance, we don't say, could you come here, please? We say, come here, right? I always have to stop myself and squeeze my lips together to say nothing more, because we've got to keep it simple. I noticed that in my example, I also was talking about body language. It's really important that we're helping the child to understand what we want them to do, that our body language is simple and clear. Have you ever been in the experience? I know we just went through this the other day, that we were going to some sort of a facility and there was a person who was directing traffic, and they had the white gloves on and everything, but they were kind of doing this. And my husband was driving and he said, "What is he doing? I have no idea what he wants me to do. Does he want me to run? Does he want me to do disco? What is he doing?" Right? And the person needed to be very specific with their hands and be, pointing, "You want to do this." We got to be 100% clear with our body language, and the body language has to go with the one word that we want to do. We have to be very careful that our stimuli, the example that I was using, maybe the first time it was soup with a soup and with a spoon, and I got to make sure that if I really want the child to learn the word eat, that the next time I give something that isn't soup, maybe it's something with a fork, and then something that you eat with your hands, right? So that I'm narrowing it down for the child. I want to make sure that all of my utterances are succinct, and that I encourage them. I can encourage them with utterances as well. That if they start to say something, if I say the word eat, that I encourage them to say eat as well, and I reward approximations. And of course, key to all of these things that we do, that we give reinforcement. So if I'm asking the child to do an action and I'm saying eat, and they start to do it, that I give them reinforcement so that they know that they got it right, that what I said and what they did matched in some way. It's going to take a little while, just like it would for you and I learning Russian, to figure out, okay, this thing actually means eat, but I clearly got that I clearly understand that I'm doing what they want me to do, and they like it when I do this. So I'm going to engage in this behavior more often, and that's really key with receptive language, that they understand that when they react appropriately, we're going to reward them. They'll be more likely to continue to do it. Receptive language, a really important part of development for all of our kids, and it's something that we can do mainly if we keep it simple. It's not the easiest thing, but we can do that. That's what's going to help our children to be able to communicate at a higher level and reach their fullest potential. Receptive language, it's a really good thing. Okay, stick with us. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go on to the healthy eating tip of the week, but this week I'm calling it the How Stupid Do I Look segment. Stick with us. Currently in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Granpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some guesses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christy and Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and it is the time of week when we take on the healthy eating tip. And I sort of want to rename this episode, this segment this week, How Stupid Do I Look? There's been a lot of talk in the last week because at the start of the month, a study came out of Stanford, and it suggested, it was about organic food, and the question that they were trying to answer, and I've got the study right here in front of me, the question that they were trying to answer was, they're comparing the health effects of organic and conventional foods. So they were looking at a couple of different factors in organic foods and conventional foods, but important to note that for this study, they did absolutely no experimentation. They were reviewing approximately 30 other studies that have been done in the past on, and studies that were proving different things, okay? So it's kind of a review of studies that are out there looking at, are these things, is there any health difference between these things, supposedly? But what they ended up looking at, a couple of different factors, as I said, but what the vitamin and mineral content were of things, what the pesticide content of things were, and what some of the negative bacteria and E. coli and things, you know, to separate the two, what was different. And the study was done, and it was published at the beginning of September, and I'm going to read to you from the conclusion for the study. It says, the published literature lacks strong evidence that organic foods are significantly more nutritious than conventional foods. Consumption of organic foods may reduce exposure to pesticide residues and antibiotic resistant bacteria. Okay, that's what the conclusion says right here. And then there was a firestorm of media coverage about this that was fascinating to me. And I missed the first couple of days of it because my son was sick, and you know how that is, you miss a news cycle for something happening. And the next thing I knew, I'm listening to the radio and I'm hearing people talk about the study, and they said, oh yeah, well, did you see that organic food, that they've proven that it's not as nutritious, it doesn't have as many vitamins and minerals as conventional food. And I almost pulled the car over. I said, what? What study proved what? And I remember coming home to my husband and saying, okay, seriously, how could that be? Because what are we saying? That there's vitamin and minerals in the pesticides? Now, what happened is that the person who was commenting about it it had gone so far in the media that it trickled down to them, and they had minimized it to the point where they were saying, oh, in fact, now the organic produce has less vitamins and minerals. Not fact. Not fact at all. And in fact, the study was looking at it, and what they determined was that in their opinion, that the difference was not significant enough, that the organic produce did test higher in vitamins and minerals, but that it wasn't, in their opinion, significant enough to warrant the difference in price that you pay for organic. Now, do you see a problem here with me? Are you with me so far? Because as a parent, I would like to know, in no place in the study did it say, well, here is how we determine what is significant to us, and we're only looking at the vitamin content, not the fact that there is additional. They kept the things separate instead of cumulative. So they said, okay, well, the phosphorus is significantly higher in the organic produce, which is good for you, but weigh it with the other things, which were also higher, but the whole thing isn't significant enough for us to warrant the price. Of course, you will get, and they estimated 30% fewer chance of exposure to pesticide residue, but they said, but that's not really of interest to us either, because it's still within range that the FDA has approved for human consumption. Oh. How about if we put all of those factors together? And I was saying to Emily, our wonderful technical director, earlier, imagine, saying to a consumer, okay, here I've got a peach that has a little bit of dog poop on it, and here I've got a peach that does not have the dog poop. Which one would you like? Honestly, it is one of these things where I want to say, how dumb do they think that consumers are? And obviously they think that we're pretty dumb, and I just want to read some of the headlines. Now that you know that the study did show that they were more nutritious, they're just saying that we don't think it's nutritious enough, the difference is enough to warrant the price. Well, the price is more for organic. I absolutely agree. But I want to read to you some of the headlines here that, and let's make sure that I've got the right ones. There was a New York Times article written about this, and the headline was Organic Food versus Conventional Food. And it said, does an organic strawberry contain more vitamin C than a conventional one? Maybe or maybe not. They go on to talk about things, and the quote from it is, they concluded that fruits and vegetables labeled organic were, on average, no more nutritious than their conventional counterparts, which is, if you read the study, that is incorrect. That is incorrect. Nor were they any less likely to be contaminated by dangerous bacteria like E. coli, but they failed to mention, as it says in the conclusion, this is the New York Times reporting on this. They say, okay, E. coli is going to be equally, which is not what it says in the study, and they fail to mention that the organic food was significantly lower in not only the pesticide residue, but the antibiotic-resistant bacteria. That was significantly higher in the non-organic, the conventionally grown produce. As a parent, I feel like that should have been the headline. I don't know about you. But then they do go on to say that there's a chance, they say conventional fruits and vegetables did have more pesticide residue, but the levels were almost always under the allowed safety limits, the scientists said. Almost always. Oh, so the dog poop on the peach is getting bigger and bigger, in my opinion. And that was the New York Times, Kenneth Chang talking about that. Then another study here from the Palm Beach Post, Susan Salisbury. Is it worth spending money to buy organic foods, which are usually pricier than their conventional counterparts? It says a recent Stanford University study doesn't really answer that question, but it found no evidence that organic foods are more nutritious. No, I'm sorry, Susan. That's not what it said. It said that it wasn't significantly, in their opinion, more nutritious. To me, as a parent, that's a big difference. However, it also found that consuming organic food reduces, but does not completely prevent, exposure to pesticide residue, as if that is no big thing. I'm sorry, if there's dog poop on the beach, it's a big thing to me. I just don't understand. And then a lot of reports have said, this is very misleading and that it missed the point, that there are all kinds of other concerns. There's agricultural concerns. Absolutely amazing. And one study in particular that was featured, one article that was featured in the Huffington Post, Heather Paladik, brought up the point that one of the big pivotal things that they say in the report is that it's 30% less likely, 30% more likely that you're going to get pesticide residue if you're getting the conventional. But Dr. Chuck Benbrook of the Organic Center wrote a full technical review of this and cites that in other studies that were not looked at, that number is much closer to 80%. And that it seems very suspect that we didn't look at any of those studies when we were doing this review. Very interesting. I also want to note and say to you, and I have covered this before on the show, that why should we who have children on the autism spectrum care about organic, and why did I as a parent begin to care about organic? Because a study came out in May of 2010. Don't take my word for it. Look it up online. They covered it in Time magazine. So this is mainstream understanding, and I suspect this is why we're getting all this information about organic not necessarily being as nutritious, when in fact we see that it is more nutritious. But there was a study that was done on children and looking at their baseline activity and then giving them produce and checking the amount of pesticide in their urine and checking it in conjunction with behavior as it would relate to hyperactivity. Or ADHD kinds of behavior, failure to concentrate, being more foggy, and these behaviors were charted, and it showed clearly that the children who had behavior that was more consistent with ADHD had higher levels of pesticide in their urine, and it only took a very small amount for there to be a change in behavior. And if you read that study, and they talk about the fact that organophosphates is the type of pesticide that is most widely used, especially in the United States, on conventionally grown crops. And I don't know about you, but I always heard the word pesticide and thought, oh, well, pesticide, kill pest, right? These two things go together, and it can't be that harmful to us because it's not killing us, right? It kills the bugs. Isn't that what pesticides do? And I personally did some research on organophosphates to find out that, in fact, that is a little bit of a misnomer, that it isn't so much that the pesticide kills the bugs. This particular kind of pesticide, organophosphates, what it does is stimulate neurotransmitters in the bug's nervous system and overstimulates them to the point where they become overactive. It makes them hyper. That's what it does. And then as a result of that, the bugs become so disoriented by the fact that their body needs to be in constant motion that they're so distracted that they're unable to eat or mate. And so they die off from that. That is, in fact, what kills them. And in some circumstances, depending on the amount of pesticide they give the bug, it can overstimulate them to the point where they're moving, and it gets to a certain point where literally the nervous system completely shuts down and the bugs become paralyzed. That is, in fact, how these pesticides are killing the bugs. And when you hear that, I don't know about you, but as a parent of a child with autism, I went, oh, well, and they can show you exactly, well, it takes this much organophosphate to make the bug, which is teeny, teeny, tiny, hyperactive. And it takes this much of the organophosphate to make the bug so hyperactive that it's paralyzed. And then we just wait for the bug to die. And here I have a child who has neuro issues. And it occurred to me that perhaps I did not want to put that into his system, especially if even a small amount of it in the urine of subjects who are in his age range, they can see a correlation between hyperactivity. Because it does affect the neurotransmitters of our kids. So when you hear about organic produce, and they're talking about it a lot in the media right now, I would encourage you to get as educated as you can about what these studies say and what they don't say, and not necessarily listen to the media who assumes that we are all not intelligent. That is not the case. I encourage you to educate yourself, look at the actual study, and see that it does show that it is more nutritious. They're just saying, is it really worth it, your bang for your buck? And that's a decision for you to make in your home, but not to be misled by the media. All right. That's my opinion on this. But write in if you guys have questions or comments. We're going to take a short break, and we are going to come back and talk about how we can set our kids up for success by things that we do after school. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We talk a lot on this show about how we can set our kids up for success, whether it's success on a play date, whether it's success in the classroom, whether it's success at bedtime. We constantly want to be thinking of setting our kids up for success. And since once they become school age, if we send them off to school rather than homeschool them, it's a significant part of their day, the educational part of their day. And it's really important that we set them up for success. And we talked last week about things we can do in the morning to make it more streamlined, less stressful for all of us, and to get them at the door of the classroom in a mindset where they are set up for success. Well, today I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the other end of that event. What can we do when they come home from school to set them up for success in the afternoon and doing homework, but also to set them up for success of going back to school. So I've got a list of things to keep in mind, suggestions and tips, and of course you need to filter it through what's appropriate for your child, because, and especially all of our children are different, but they're also going to go through different phases in their life. So what might be appropriate at one period of time for your child might not be when they get a little bit older, vice versa. So think about it for you and what works for your family and what works for your child, but just some things to consider. First of all, giving them time when they come home from school, some time in some way to decompress. Now, is that going to be different for all of our kids? Absolutely. For some children, that may be getting to sit and be quiet for a few minutes because the sensory stimulation of the classroom has been so much that they need a little bit of time, a little bit of quiet time. For another child, it may need that they need to do a bunch of physical activity to get their yayas out, right? They've been sitting at a desk and they need to physically move and they need to do something. For some kids, they may need a lot of one-on-one FaceTime with you, a lot of interaction going on, or interaction with a child. They may really need somebody there with them. Some kids may need, to be hugged and squeezed. Other kids may need to be hands off for a while. But stop and consider what decompresses your child to sort of blow off the steam. Transitions are hard for all of us when you stop and think about it. Haven't we all experienced that moment where, you've gone and you've done something, you have to run and pick up your child and your body and your head just isn't quite there yet, and you got to take a breath and, and say, give mommy a minute and then I'll be right here. But physically, where you are physically and mentally are not in the same place. Our kids are the same way. They maybe just can't language it. So we have to give them time to decompress. It can be time for us to decompress too, but be mindful about what actually decompresses your child and what actually decompresses you, because it might be two completely different things that don't work well together. And that could be a problem. But build in some time for them to decompress. Give clear homework expectations. And I think it's really important to set that up as soon as you can, but don't be afraid if you haven't already, set it up today. And, I'm ex-teacher, and I love that teachers always say, well, there's always Monday. We can always start over on Monday, institute new rules, and say, well, it's a new week. We're doing this in a new way. So have clear expectations about, is the child supposed to do 5 minutes of homework? Are they going to do it until it's done? What are your expectations with the homework? If you're not clear, how are we expecting the children to be clear? So we have to be clear, and that's going to change significantly depending upon your child's skill level and their age level and the speed at which their class is moving. I can remember when my son was in kindergarten, we got a packet of stuff that came home on Friday, and we sat down and did homework on Friday because it was the one period of time that he didn't have a scheduled therapist to come. So we did the homework packet in its entirety on Friday, and it went into the backpack and it was done because that's what worked for our therapy schedule. And, in first grade and in second grade, what we discovered was that didn't work anymore because there was so much homework, it would be overwhelming for him to do all of it. And we needed to get him in the pace of, we're going to do 10 minutes every day. But again, it was a packet that came home and you had to turn it in a certain day. Now, in fourth grade, man, it doesn't work that way. There's only homework Monday through Thursday. You get it day of, and it's got to be done day of, and it's got to be done in its entirety. So, you really have to go with the flow, but being clear with a child and saying, here is what's going to happen. We're going to sit down and we're going to do the homework until we're done. That might take you 10 minutes. Or it might take you 3 hours, but we're going to sit here and do it. Or you might say to the child, all of this homework needs to get done, so we're going to do it in 10-minute increments. And as long as you're being productive in those 10 minutes, then we're going to take a 5-minute break and do whatever. Whatever works for your child, but be clear about it. Absolutely clear about what your expectations are. And the next one is snacks and liquids. Make sure that you're hydrating your child and that you're offering some kind of sustenance either before or during or immediately afterward. I don't think it's a good idea to say to a child, okay, you can do this, and then after you're done, you get to have your snack if there was nothing else given beforehand. Because if the child is hungry or their blood sugar has dropped, you're setting yourself up for a tantrum and a meltdown. Because what happens when they don't do it, and now you're withholding the snack, and now you're getting close to dinner oh, I've done that before. Don't do that. It's not productive. Okay, give clear reinforcement for the day and clear reinforcement for the homework. So if your child went to school and had a great day, there's some kind of reinforcer for that. We've shown you before the token economy things that we offer here. If you need to set up that with your child so that you can see how they did during the day and that they did great, and there's a reinforcer that they know that they're going to get for doing that, but then have clear reinforcement for doing the homework as well. Because they're two entirely different things and they need to be reinforced. So for instance, you know, for my son, he chooses what he's going to work for if he gets his 5 stickers at school. A lot of times it's video games. So when he comes home now, he gets to decompress and do something for like 10 minutes, not usually the video games, although sometimes we negotiate that. But, you know, he gets a little bit of decompress time and an opportunity to eat something. Then it's time to sit down and do the homework. Well, there has to be an immediate reward for the homework as well. He knows he's got video games coming that he can trade in later on from school, but there's got to be some immediate reinforcement for homework. And, you know, that may be getting to do something. I mean, it really depends on what your child, your individual child, finds reinforcing. And then, of course, the last one, if at all possible, and it's not the easiest thing, right? Make it fun. For some kids, that means being with them while they're doing their homework. For some kids, it might mean playing music in the background that's not distracting. For other kids, that would be the complete opposite of what you needed to do. Maybe they need complete quiet without a lot going on. But we did a thing with my son whenever he would have a spelling, every week there was a spelling test. And there were words that he had to get, and it was really hard in the beginning. And we had the little spelling word song so that every time he would spell a word, either Dad or I, whoever was working on it with him, or the therapist, as it were, we would say, spell this word, and if he would get it right, we would do the na-na-na-na, this whole big dance and song thing. I won't do it for you here because it's embarrassing. And we would make it crazy and fun. And he worked so hard to get the spelling word right because he wanted to see us make fools of ourselves. And we did that for 3 years. He doesn't have spelling words this year. Now we're more into long division and algebra. It gets harder, but make it as fun as you can. And don't be afraid to think outside the box. You know, how can you make it as fun as possible? Because that's what gets the job done. And remember that that's what we're about, setting them up for success. And it sounds like it's extra work. It really isn't, because if you set your child up for success and make homework fun, they come home and they sit down and they do the homework and the homework is done and you go, whew, and it's not an hour-long battle to get them to the table, to get them to do the homework. It's worth the investment of time, and you'll find if you make it fun for them, it makes it fun for you too. It actually might help you to decompress from the day. But setting our kids up for success at school, we can do it in the morning, but we also want to hit that afternoon time, really super duper important. Okay, stick with us. Oh, we're going to go to the A word. We're a little bit late on the A word. In fact, this is the wonderful documentary that's being made at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. They're following a little boy, Jack Riley. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2, and we're seeing him in this episode about 3 weeks into therapy. And you hear the parents describe how it's going. They're seeing progress already, which is wonderful, but it's not easy. And we'll talk about it when we come back. This is the A word.
I just wanted to ask you how you're adjusting with all these people coming in and out of the home.
You know, half of me is used to it. Half of me is no longer freaking out about how clean my house is, clearly. The other half of me is still really overwhelmed. And, you know, if there's talk of one more thing that we add to our list for that week, sort of freaks me out, at least initially.
Well, it's easier now. It was very strange the first week. He's making progress. It's sort of relentless. When you think you have a moment to relax, oh, wait a minute, 9:30, so-and-so is showing up. But it's just an adjustment. It's not overwhelming necessarily. There are times where you just need an hour and it's not coming. But we've developed a fondness for all you guys, so that makes it easier. And he's making progress, so who really cares how inconvenient it is?
What color?
You're funny.
I like Spider-Man.
You're funny.
You were such a clever.
Hey! She's not a jungle gym.
You're funny.
Hey.
You're funny. You're funny. Go. Hey, you wanted to go color. Yeah, go color.
Yeah, come here.
Color.
I have colors for you. Here. Do you want green or orange? Which one's orange? Green or orange? Orange, yeah. Good job.
I see changes in him every day. Today we went to OT and just watching him climb up a rope. And he got to the top and he was on a ledge and she had to show him how to turn over on his belly to climb back down. And he did it again and he got to the top and he remembered. He knew to turn on his belly and do it. So just watching how he's soaking up stuff and being able to adapt it so quickly is pretty impressive. Now, if only that would work with the eating. That's probably still our biggest challenge is eating.
Yeah, eating's it's a task. The therapist came out because he needed to eat. And it probably took him, 10 minutes to really take his first bite. But what he'll eat and how he'll eat and when he'll eat are very challenging stuff.
I think the goal is to develop the relationships with the girls first and to be more compliant on behaviors that don't involve food or eating. He gets really worked up when new foods are introduced to him. It's a good 10, 12 minutes before he'll even consider eating anything else. So we have to get past that and probably introduce it to him a lot and let him play with it more and just get that fear or anxiety out of him. But it's going to be a slow process, I think.
He's making something very intricate. And I'm surprised. I was talking to Susanna because he's so into textures and how things feel, and I was surprised that he even wanted to touch it.
We had peaches in front of him today with applesauce and tried to make it fun to run the trains through, and he was not happy about the whole thing.
Can we squish it?
Are you all done with the Play-Doh?
Yeah, let's go.
All
Let's
done.
go clean up. Clean up. Thank you. Good job.
Uh-oh, you don't want to be done yet.
We can play with it later, Jack Riley. We're done for now, okay?
You want to eat?
Are you hungry?
Are you hungry? You want lunch?
Do you want lunch? Do you want to watch Pocoyo with lunch? Pocoyo? Oh, Jack.
How has it been like just adjusting to there's days when he's having therapy and he's having difficulty, he's crying and
Those are hard on us because I think we're both overly sensitive anyway, and he's your son. Those days haven't been that many where he's like emotionally drained or anything. I think he's made the adjustment maybe better than we have.
Thursday, I remember sitting in my office and hearing him cry pretty hard, and I had to call a girlfriend. Mike was gone, so I had to call a girlfriend, and I was pretty close to tears. And she talked me off the ledge, which was a good thing. But since then, it's been easier to hear him. I haven't heard it as bad, or it hasn't felt as bad, but I know it's good for him, and I know that he's being asked to do things that he's not used to being asked to do. So there's nothing wrong with that.
This one. What color? Green. Green. Yeah.
Last night there were bubbles on a page, and not only did he say bubble and pointed at all the bubbles, but then he decided to pop the bubbles and started saying pop. And so he's using the words right, and that book, I think we went through every page and he found something on every page that he knew the word for.
Go get him. Pop.
Nothing is easy for him anymore, even with us. I think if he wants to do anything or if he wants to try anything, he has to ask us for it or say the color or do something. So I think we learned that from ABA.
Pocoyo or Baby Babble? Babble.
Good choice.
Baby Babble.
Baby Babble. That's good talking. We have all
Bubbles.
bubbles.
Pop. If he's watching a video with you, he turns and make sure you get. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So he's fully engages you to make sure you're paying attention, and that's great because I like when he looks at my eyes.
Welcome back. That was the A word, and so much to talk about there. But one of the things that two of the things that I want to talk about, you notice that they say, well, there's so much progress. And by the way, they're showing you right now that you can watch all of this series on YouTube. They have their own YouTube channel, and you can start from the beginning, and there's a year's worth of episodes there. So if you really want to see the arc of ABA and what can happen with a child, really, really useful to get an idea of how you build a skill. And but I want to talk about a couple of different things there. First of all, that the parents say, there's progress, but it's really hard. And they talk about, well, the hardest thing, though, is the eating. And I think it's really important, when you start an ABA program, you kind of have your laundry list of things. By the time you get to that point, you've got enough buy-in and you've heard enough people talking about how you can reduce challenging behaviors and you can learn all these skills that you start to get your dream list in your head, right? You get it together in your head and think, oh, okay, I really want for my child to fill in the blank, right? And for a lot of people, it's speak. That's a big one, right? And then on the other side, I really want my child to stop, and then it's self-injurious behaviors, screaming, or fill in the blank, right? And so you have that idea, and you hear that progress can happen, and it can happen really quickly. And sometimes, I know certainly in my case, and in this case as well, the child starts to work. And what I love, especially about the card method, is that they very carefully assess where the child is in space and time. And then they put together a plan of, here's how we're going to get from point A to point G, and we're going to evaluate as we go along. And there's also a plan to get from A to Z as well. But they know from years of experience, and you guys can see this even in the skills program, that, I might want my child to do self-feeding, but if I were to look at the prerequisites, that in terms of college classes, this would be an upper division class. And I don't have the prerequisites, and if I start taking the upper division class, I'm probably not going to be set up for success until I've taken the prerequisites, right? And so they start to work on the prerequisites. And sometimes as a parent, it's really, really frustrating. It's so frustrating because you think, oh my gosh, I've waited so long and now we're having therapy. And every time we get together, I say to you guys, the thing that's most important to me is that we work on this. And they say yes, but I don't see you working on it because the prerequisites are being met before they get there. And what we see over this year, the parents, 3 weeks in, they're like, man, we really want to work on the food thing. The food thing is just he gets really upset, and it's upsetting to us, and it's a problem. And of course, they are working on the food thing slowly by working on a bunch of other things around that, and we'll see in the coming weeks. And the child, I will say this too, in this case with Jack Riley, he does eat. He's not failing to thrive. He's not underweight. So it's something that it behooves them to do the prerequisites and to move slowly into desensitizing him to different things that he literally, you show the child a banana and he cries. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. But if you have the luxury of the child being in a healthy place where he's at an appropriate weight and he's not failing to thrive, if you have the luxury of working in a slow way, then, we can be working on a bunch of different things and being very helpful to the child. Clearly, if the child were failing to thrive or was underweight, you'd have to make that a priority sooner and be working on things in a way that could help the child get to the point where we could get to where we are anyway. But he is in a place where he can, he does eat. He just doesn't eat the variety of things, and he gets emotional, and it's difficult. So they're working on a whole host of things with him. And I wanted to throw that out there because sometimes it's frustrating for a parent. We don't always know what all the prerequisites are, and it's frustrating because you go, well, how are we going to get there? And they're sitting there going, we have the plan, we're getting there. And you can ask to say, show me the map. Show me how we're getting there. And a good ABA provider will absolutely show you how you're going to get there and what skills you need to have in place before you can get there. I can remember saying to our supervisor, okay, I'm really concerned about this. After a while, I was like, I know there's a plan, but just tell me, what's the timeline? How are we working on that? What do we have on board before that happens? And they would absolutely tell me. I also also want to mention that in this particular video, at one point the mom says, boy, it's really been interesting. You know, he's soaking so many things up, but he has to work for everything. He doesn't get anything for free. If he wants something, he has to ask for it. If he, you know, anything that he wants to do, he has to work for it. And that is a real shift when that moment happens in the house. And I know for me, I already felt like I was doing that. I certainly felt like, you know, I had been doing all the prompting to try to get my child to talk, and that I was doing it as much as possible. What I didn't realize is that it's so hard to do that if you're not getting a result, right? We know that in order for any behavior to be maintained, it has to be reinforcing on some level. And every time that I was asking my child to speak or to say something, or we even saw it in last week's video with the mom when they were at clinic, and she was saying to Jack Riley, he was holding a Barbie, and she said, can you kiss the, oh, pretty, can you kiss the Barbie? Can you kiss the Barbie? Would you kiss the dolly, Jack Riley? Can you kiss the dolly? And eventually she stopped because he wasn't doing it. He showed no sign of acknowledging her. And so after saying it like 5 times, it wasn't that she wasn't attempting to interact with her child. She absolutely was. But she didn't know enough about ABA then to know if I start the interaction, we have to finish the interaction. And if that means that if I've said to you, you know, kiss the Barbie, at some point, if you're not doing it, I have to get up and go over to you and physically prompt you through and bring the doll to you, and I have to model it and do whatever. I have to get you to kiss the Barbie if I've asked you to do it, and we're not going to let it alone until you do. And I certainly, when we started ABA, I thought that I was constantly interacting with my child and saying to him, you know, if he wanted something, you know, say, you know, whatever. And I was saying it, but I wasn't following through on it. And we have to follow through and then reinforce them in order to make it happen. So a huge difference from what we were doing to what we do by saying, I'm going to make them work for everything and I'm going to reinforce them. I'm going to follow through on everything and I'm going to reinforce them. Every single time. What happens is that you start reinforcing your child hundreds of times, hundreds, probably thousands of times within a given day. It's exhausting. But once you see that it starts to work, then you go, oh, I'm going to do this that much more. And you want, because now you're being reinforced. Your child is learning. So you want to do it more and more and more. Really love this series. I hope you guys are watching it and supporting it. Really special family, and I so appreciate that they allow us to look in and see what's happening with their family. And again, you can watch the episodes in their entirety, over a year's worth, on their YouTube channel that you see on the screen there. It's the A Word. It's really lovely. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at your answers to the question of the day, both today and yesterday. Yesterday, we asked you, what's the hardest financial part of autism for you? And quite frankly, I'm going to spend more time reading what you guys answered on that. And today we asked you, if money weren't an issue, what therapy or therapies would you guys be doing? Overwhelmingly, duh, you guys wrote in and said ABA. You said a couple of other things as well. But I specifically want to read some of these things that you guys have written in about finances, because I think we could all stand to know that it isn't just us. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Bryce Myler, and I'm the Contracts Director for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I've been here for about 5 years. CARD has several employees with many years of insurance experience, dealing with insurance, dealing with pre-authorizations, dealing with discovering whether there's coverage or not. So we have more experience than any ABA provider that I've ever come across. So for a prospective client, somebody that may be interested in, you know, ABA therapy and what CARD has to offer, we have a special 800 number, and you call that number. They will talk to you about what we have to offer, how ABA works. He'll ask you for the front and back of your ID card, and then we check to see if you do or do not have coverage. If you have coverage for ABA therapy, we try to do whatever we can to set it up where we can bill for you and you don't have to fight with the insurance company every month to get your claims paid. For California residents, we recently did a series of insurance trainings all over the state, and you can click on the link below to watch pretty much the full presentation. It has a lot of information, how you can get your insurance company to comply with what they're supposed to do, understanding the networks, and many other valuable pieces of information.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and it's that time of day when we talk about your answers to the question of the day. Today our question was, if you could afford any therapy, if money was not an issue, what therapy would you want to be doing? Overwhelmingly, you guys wrote in and said ABA. A lot of you said more speech, more OT. Some of you said APE. Some of you said, like there were a host of things in terms of, I can't even think what the term of it is. Some of you said HBOT. There were a whole host of things that you guys said. But I'm actually, we didn't get a chance to go to your answers to the question of the day yesterday. And what we asked yesterday was, what's the hardest financial part of autism for you? Because this entire week we're talking about funding. It's a part of it. I wish it weren't. Wow, man, you know, when I sit and dream about a world that's perfect, it's a world where whatever your child needs, your child gets. And that it has no bearing on what you make, what you don't make, where you live, how old your child is. It's just a flat question. What your child needs, your child gets. And I hope that in my lifetime we get to that. I really do. But until then, there's a financial consideration and a huge financial constraint when we're talking about autism. And I don't think enough people know and understand that it's not just them. And I certainly think that our friends and family don't understand. And I've shared before that, you know, I'm so lucky, so lucky that we lived in the state of California and that they have the regional centers. And at the time that we started, which was right before the whole financial thing that happened, the economy, we were approved to get, and believe me, it was not easy. I don't mean to make it sound like we just walked in and said, you know, we think this is what our child needs and that it was given to us. There was a lot of work that was involved and a lot of strife. But eventually, it took us about 8-9 months. We were able to settle the first round of controversy, and my child was getting the proper amount of ABA therapy, which is remarkable, right? And it almost, you know, I almost want to say it doesn't matter what it took. It happened, and that's the brilliant thing. But I want you to know that that was not easy. It wasn't like I just walked in a door and they gave that to me. But still, I know how incredibly lucky, and I really get it now more than ever, how incredibly lucky we were. And yet, so, you know, here I am in the best of all possible circumstances where somebody paid for the ABA therapy, and it was still financially devastating to my family. Why? And we'll talk about it because you guys are writing about exactly these kinds of things. The first one, somebody says not being able to work. When our kids are home and having ABA, in a lot of circumstances, not all of them now, and that's fairly recent, but in a lot of circumstances, one parent has to be home and has to be available. And if you can work around that, great, but that's hard to figure out, right? So if you've been a 2-income family, which we were, and suddenly you're a 1-income family, that's a huge consideration added with all the other things that you guys are talking about here. And another person says, not being able to work, resources are terrible, insurance doesn't pay for squat, etc. A person who says, for us, it's been replacing and fixing all the iPads he's broken. Oh, get some insurance on that. They're his and they're lifesavers, but he breaks them weekly. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Pretty much with all the other expenses for him, we've been blessed to have great insurance. Good for you. And my husband has been blessed with a great job. Fabulous for you. But still, I hope that your ABA provider, first of all, there are things that you can get that protect the iPad to some extent, and insurance when you can't protect it beyond that. But I hope that they're working on that behavior. rough when it's the thing that they're going to use to communicate, because you don't want to take it away from them. That can't be the cost response for it, but I hope that's the first thing on your list to do, is to work on that behavior and get the child not to be breaking the iPad. Okay, here's and these things that people don't think about: gas and food. My daughter is so picky with food, it's almost impossible for her to get to eat anything. Sometimes she'll go 2 days without eating. There are some foods she'll eat, but they are not cheap, so it costs a lot to feed her. And I think if a child is getting to the point where they're going 2 days without eating, really time to call in extra help. Seriously, because that, you're getting into danger land, and I think you're already there. So really want to encourage you, call in an expert. We've had several of the top experts on the show giving interviews from ABAI that with websites to go back and look at, and call them. Call them. There's also SOS at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. You can go to www.centerforautism, go to the services tab, go to SOS and say, who can you get over here that's close? I don't know where you live, but don't let that go. But food is always an issue. It's more expensive when your child is on the autism spectrum, either because they have special diet or because they're picky, and we're trying to keep their diets as clean as possible. And we were just talking about organic food. It's more expensive. It's a reality. And gas. A lot of you wrote in and said gas because of all the extra places that you have to go. It can't be understated. Okay, another person who says, it makes me feel better to know I'm not the only one struggling. And not the only one struggling with gas and bills and jobs. My son, my world, I would do anything for him. It's hard to work when you have a special needs child who needs you, and it's hard to trust someone with your kids, especially if speech is an issue. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're getting therapy, it's not even an option for a lot of providers. Our funding came from the regional center, and the deal was a parent had to be there. I was aware of another family that was asking if they could bring the child to a daycare and have the therapist be there and work on them one-on-one. They wouldn't pay for it. They would not pay for it. The parent had to be there. As I said, there are some exceptions to that now, that there are schools and funding sources will pay, and the parents can both work and put the child there, and the child's going to school and getting one-on-one therapy, but they're not everywhere yet. It's a problem. Another person who says gas, getting back and forth from his long-distance appointments. Yeah. Another person says, I truly understand what you're saying, talking to a specific mom on the list here, and going through. When a single mother with a child on the spectrum doesn't have any backbone to help you, it's hard, but we do what we have to do to care for that child in need of our love and help. This person goes on to say that this person earned a degree in education, and because they completed their MA, they were told that they were overqualified for the jobs that they could get. And then other jobs, she says, I was told that I didn't get the job because I was underqualified, and it's very frustrating. Honestly, when you're an autism parent and you've got constraints, the pool of jobs in which you can do, let's be honest, it becomes smaller. It becomes smaller, and a lot of times you have to do jobs that were not things, I was a teacher. And suddenly my child had autism, and I needed to be home during the hours that I would normally have taught. So it was a hurry-scurry, and it was, create a new career for yourself, which is essentially what I had to do, something that I could work from home. I had never worked from home before, but I had to make that happen, and I wasn't incredibly successful at it. It was really stressful. It was really hard, and I wouldn't want to go through that again. And I know a lot of you are in that boat. You're, thinking, okay, I'm reinventing myself. So it didn't matter that I had a master's degree. I suddenly was in a pool of people that I had no experience. It's rough when you're having to switch careers. And one of the things that I love about Areva Martin's Special Needs Network is that she provides counseling for parents, especially the underserved populations, to help them for job counseling to change their jobs, because careers change as a must. Another person who says their child's special needs, and of course gas. Another person, gas to drive all over Timbuktu for therapies and special doctors, alternative therapies not covered by insurance, such as an acting class designed specifically for kids on the autism spectrum. Yeah, you hear about things, and I'm sure we show them here on the show, and we say, you know, here's another great thing you can do, and horseback riding. It's just, you know, great for some kids, and swim with the dolphins, and surf, but you know, there's a whole lot of considerations there. Who's paying for the riding lessons? How do you have the gas to get to the beach to do the surf thing? Even when the surf camp is for free, you know, to take off 2 days to go to the surf camp, and that the gas to drive there, it can be a lot, right? Another person who says being able to get extra ABA training for me and my daughter. Yeah. A lot of things on this list. Losing my job in 2008, not being able to find a new one because I'm overqualified for a new one. Yeah. Can I tell you, at one point, things had gotten so bad in our household, and my attempts to work from home were struggling because the economy had started to struggle, and it was just hard. And I said, well, you know, I'm going to have to go to work for one of those stores that stays open all night long. And my husband was saying, we can't do that. You're going to be exhausted. You're already exhausted, you know, because you'll have to be awake during the day. When are you going to sleep? And I was saying, I don't know. And I went to apply for it, had to go through, I want to say, 5 interviews. And again, I, you know, have my master's degree, was a college professor, and I went through the 5 interviews to work at this retail huge store. And finally they offered me a job, but because it was far enough into the autism where I had been home for a period of time, working from home, they didn't count that because I was considered self-employed because I worked via contract. And so the pay that I was offered was minimum wage. And the schedule was so inflexible that I would have had to have covered 2 hours of childcare between when my husband had to go to work and when I could be home. And the childcare was twice as expensive as what I would have made. You know, it's rough. It's really, really rough. I totally hear you guys. A person who says I had to quit my full-time job to care for my child when my ex and I separated. As other parents have said, there's no child care anywhere nearby that's capable of caring for a special needs child. And of course, that leads to a trickle-down effect. No income resulted in my house being foreclosed on, and our car being repossessed, and my dropping out of college temporarily. No money for therapy or therapeutic tools, or even getting to a specialty doctor appointment. We live over an hour away from the largest cities. We're getting back on our feet now, but it was really rough for several years. I don't think enough people hear our stories about the adversity that has to be overcome and how many things there is a trickle down, right? Bless you, and I'm glad that you're getting back on your feet. Another person who says gas to take my son to school and back 5 days a week. Not eligible for SS, Social Security, due to his dad's income. Gas prices, $4.09 in my area. It's even more here. It's so hard. Working. Another person says therapy. Traveling to his hospital stays. Going to be hard going from Virginia to Texas and missing work when he is manic. Another person who says, a lot of you jump in and say, why aren't you getting Social Security? Are you sure that you can't get it? And I appreciate that you're holding each other up. Another person who says, I'm with all of you. I can't work because we don't have a special needs daycare, and daycare centers won't take my baby. It's so overwhelming. And another person who says, not being able to work due to my child's difficulties in school. I live in a small town in Arizona, and this school district treats their behavior as being bad. So they are sent home often and also suspended often. I have to go to school. I have to go on Social Security, and these payments just don't cover my cost of living. It's a daily struggle to stay afloat. And there's another person in here, and then I'm going to address both of them, who says, I had to pick up my son from school one time every week for the last 4 weeks because he gets sick from strong smells and things like that. Who in their right mind would let me leave a job that often? He can't stay home by himself. So I would say not being able to work for a real job ever is the biggest financial part. Okay, so and this really goes to the key. There was a study that was done about parents of children with autism, and is it more stressful? Is it more stressful having a child on the autism spectrum? Oh, let me think. Could it possibly be? And they discovered that, yes, oddly enough, it's more stressful. But what I appreciated about this study was that they broke it down into different categories about what was stressful. And one of the things that was really stressful was finances. But another thing that was really stressful, that kind of goes hand in hand, was the ability to keep their job, because they were more likely, like 4 times more likely, to need to miss a day of work because of their child's needs than a parent of a typical child. And so their stress was partially from feeling like, am I going to be able to keep the roof over the head? Am I going to be able to keep my job? But one of the things that they also discovered was that those autism parents were more likely to take their job really seriously and be working really hard and putting in extra hours in order to keep the job. I know that doesn't trickle down to everybody, but I like to put it out there that hiring an autism parent, even if they're going to miss on a regular basis, might be the best thing for your business. Especially in an age when people are looking for furlough days and looking for occasionally we don't need people to be here. I know, could it possibly coincide with when an autism parent needs to pick up a child from school? I don't know. But it's really, really hard, to, even if the child is going to school, to imagine, okay, well, I'm going to go and get a job, and when my child needs me, what am I going to do? What on earth am I going to do? Difficult stuff, and I wish I could tell you guys that I had an answer. My answer for myself was that I tried to work from home. It wasn't a brilliant answer, and it really didn't stave off financial ruin. Let's be honest there. But that's how we managed to stay not homeless, and that's how we managed to stay food on the table. So I hope that we can, maybe we'll do some segments here on some different things that people can do from home, because I do know a wide range of people who need people to do things at home and talk about that kind of thing. Maybe we have somebody on the show to talk about how you can work that out and work from home. That's not the only answer. I know people that manage to work it out with work and say, here's why I'm valuable and here's why you should work around my schedule. But that's an uphill battle. All right. But what I do hear, and the hopeful note that I want to leave everybody who's watching, listening, first of all, I hear a lot of people say, okay, thank goodness it's not just me. Because there's a lot of guilt where you think, oh man, I'm supposed to be the adult here. I'm supposed to have it together. The one thing I should be able to do is make enough money, right? But you're not the only one that's having a hard time doing that. It makes sense. Everybody's having a hard time doing that. And what I also hear is that you're figuring it out how to get through it, knowing that it's not going to be forever. And that's really, really important. It isn't going to be forever, and you're working it out for your individual circumstances. All right, we're going to take a break, and we are going to come back and talk about some funding things that we can do and some ways that we can prioritize what we have working for us and what we don't have working for us that we need some help with, so that we can begin to take action. That's what we're going to do when we come back. Stick with us.
Today has partnered with Cox Communications to bring Inclusion Films to San Diego. Led by Joey Travolta, Inclusion Films teaches filmmaking to developmentally disabled children.
It's a practical film camp where we take them through the process of making a film. And each group, we split them into 3 groups, and they're each responsible for making a short film together as a group. How many people like animation in this group?
This is a wonderful opportunity for children to build their self-confidence, to develop new friendships, and it's also an opportunity for their siblings to come and to enjoy the company of other peers in this really wonderful, fun setting.
Okay, so you know what time it is?
Cox Communications has years of supporting the community. We believe in giving back to the communities we serve, and military, youth, and education are our 3 pillars. And so this really matched up with everything that we're about and what we're trying to do to give back to the San Diego community. And so we were thrilled to meet up with ACT Today and Inclusion Films and to have this wonderful synergy. 3 organizations really trying to move towards a common cause.
All right, we're ready?
There you go, got it. Mark.
Okay, you'll be talking to me, okay? So tell me your name, say my name is. In the past, we've done the Junior Apprentice, which was a takeoff on The Apprentice, the Really Late Show, which is a takeoff on The Tonight Show. And this year, we're doing a combination of 60 Minutes and Entertainment Tonight called 30 Minutes Tonight.
Okay, good. So now you understand what an improv is. You guys get the idea what an improv is? To go with the flow of something, especially in the action.
My son Elijah, he's into movies and he's into music, and so this program might bring out his particular skills.
Amazing. You're like a professional animator.
Every single person here we've met has been so kind, loving, and caring. They've given Nicholas the opportunity to be himself and be around people who had the same passion and interest as he does.
What is it you learned in the program? What did you learn?
That filming is kind of tricky.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp, and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get 2 kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate. And when they collaborate, they come up with a product that everybody can see they're a part of something. They become a community, they become a family. When you make a film, you really become a family.
Are we having fun at film camp? Yeah! We are close to Hollywood. Yep. And Hollywood is always looking for young talent like this.
Autism is an epidemic and is not going to get any better anytime soon. Families are struggling to pay the bills, to put food on their table, let alone provide services for their children. And ACT Today is a vehicle of support for these families by helping them get access to life supports that they couldn't otherwise have.
My experience in film camp has been great, and I just really love how all you guys decided to bring us together.
What I learned here, I learned to animate, how to operate the plot board. I learned about the animation and filming and editing.
Making friends.
Making new friends and acting.
Meeting new friends. You can be anything you want to be.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our subject this week has been funding. So all this week we're talking about funding and how we can do the best we can, really. I mean, that's really what we're getting at. There is funding available for autism treatment. It just isn't widespread enough. But there are things that we can do to help ourselves, and it really starts with assessing what the situation is. It's hard sometimes because you got to look with an eye that is forgiving and is really clear and focused, and to see what is not what we wish it would be, or not what we're ashamed of or embarrassed by or whatever, really sitting down and taking stock. So that's the tip that I want to talk about today, is how to do that. Really take a snapshot of where you're at. So here are some different things to talk about. You know, whenever we're faced with a dilemma, it's my dad always used to make me sit down and do the plus and the minus column, right? You know, so what are the good parts of this and what are the bad parts of this? And what I always loved was sitting down and listing all the positive things. Yeah, the negative things were there too. So it wasn't being, you know, completely head in the sand, but it makes you acknowledge, okay, well, I do have this going for me. So I think it's important to do that with our financial life once autism comes to live in our neighborhood or in our home. We get a snapshot of all of our available choices. What do we have in our plus column? And I mean literally everything. You know, what do you have, things that you can sell? We're not saying that we're going to touch things. We're not going to say that we're going to touch our retirement. We're not saying any of that, but just listing what is available. What are all of the choices? Because sometimes when you list the choices, you begin to see, okay, I do have choices. I'm not going to sell my home and move to another state, but you know, the reality is I could, but I'm not going to do that. I think it gives us a little bit of breathing room when we know that we have choices. Now, having a house that's able to sell, you know, certainly not something that everybody has, and especially in this economy and in this housing market. You may have a house, but may not be able to sell it. So not the best example, but knowing what all of your options are, right? And asking yourself, once you list all of the different assets in the plus column of here are the things I've got going for me. And I imagine that you probably know what are the things in the minus column, but if you're not clear on it, list those as well. But really with an eye to focus on what the assets are. But then you can start to ask yourself some questions. What's the least stressful in terms of the short term? You know, it's like plugging the holes in the dam and saying, okay, what do I need to do to get through the next 3 months? And that will be the least stressful, that I can manage. But then asking yourself, what's the least stressful long term? Now, and I will tell you, this is the mistake that my husband and I made, was that we kept dealing with the short term and saying, well, this is what we're going to do to get by, and we didn't have an eye to the long term, and it was much to our detriment. I'm going to be quite honest with you. So asking yourself both those questions, what's the least stressful short term, what's the least stressful long term, and then pursue the things that don't cause debt first. So if you have the option of insurance, and yes, it takes paperwork and it takes time and it takes initiative when you've got a whole lot of other things going on. I wish that I could make people understand, because they go, well, I just don't understand. You know, there are some people who probably have insurance and they haven't figured out yet that they have, and blah, 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 blah. These are my friends that don't have children on the spectrum and say, I don't get it. You know, and I say, well, imagine that your day is really full with a child who is engaging in a lot of challenging behavior, and now sit down and do a bunch of paperwork. Yeah, it's a little different than just sitting down and doing your taxes, right? I want you to do your taxes while juggling 8 kids who are pulling the blinds down off the wall, because one child with autism who's engaging in challenging behavior is a lot like having 8 children pulling things down off the wall, right? So, you know, it's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, but if we have the priority list and say, well, we're going to pursue all the things that don't cause debt first. So that means that we're going to apply for the grants. We're going to apply for the insurance. We're going to see all of these things before we move into the things that involve borrowing money from anyone or incurring any extra debt. It may be that you get into a situation where you have to get to that, excuse me, but make sure you've pursued all the other stuff first. And of course, the last thing on here is to seek financial advice. You know how they say that if something happens to you, if you have some sort of trauma, let's say a loved one dies, that they ask you not to make any big decisions in that moment. That even if you're a brilliant person and you're really centered, you are not going to be at your highest self to make decisions that are going to have long-lasting effects. Well, I can speak to the fact that when your child is diagnosed with autism and you have to rearrange everything else in your life and you're tired and you're exhausted, it is not the moment when you want to be making the big sweeping decisions on your own. You know, we say get help with your child, get a BCBA who's experienced with autism in there to help you with the challenging behavior, but also take the time to consult with a really respected person who can give you great financial advice. And you know, more and more parents who have gone through this experience and were in the financial world have come to the financial world now and said, I want to help special need parents. So you literally can go online and look for and see, you know, financial advisor autism, and find someone who not only has expertise with finances, but also understands what it's like having a special needs family, may even be a parent who has gone through the tough years and really gets it, what you're going through, and isn't just going to say, well, stop having those lattes and it'll all be better. That was all the big financial advice that was shown on television when we were going through what we were going through. Well, you know, if you would just stop having lattes once a week, you could build this into $1 million in your return. And I would think, latte? Who is having a latte? Right? But again, seeking financial advice and appropriate financial advice, make sure it's somebody that's trustworthy and that gets it. That this is not just a short-term issue for you. You got to have a long-term plan here. You'll feel better, you'll sleep better if you consult with somebody who can help you to chart a course. But again, looking at this and saying, okay, what do I have in my column? Anytime that I've had the opportunity to talk to a parent who's, you know, in that financial insecurity, that moment when it's all crashing down on you, and have said, okay, let's make a list. It's amazing the things that come up on the list. Parents who, you know, have said, I don't have, there's nothing here, but they were able to see that they were in a position for a fundraiser, or they were able to see that they were in a position to apply for a grant, or they were able to see that they were in a position to tap into some funding that they hadn't considered before. So really worthwhile to take the time and make the list and say, okay, what do I have going for me? And it may be that, you know, your brother-in-law has a cousin who's a senator. That's an asset, right? You know, so it isn't necessarily the asset what you have in your bank account or what you have that you can sell. It may be who you know. I'm just saying. So think about all those things. Be gentle with yourself. Set yourself up for success. Don't do this when you're exhausted. Don't sit and do this when there's bill collectors calling. If you have to, unplug the phone and sit yourself down with something that's pleasurable for you, whether that be a glass of wine or a bottle of seltzer, and be uninterrupted. Get somebody else to watch the kids. I know that in and of itself can be stress-inducing, but call the best friend that you've got and say, I really need you. I need to take a moment and meet with a financial advisor and go through what my options are, because we're heading into a storm financially, and I want to head it off at the pass. And if you're already in the storm, it's not too late to do all of this. We can, all of us. Okay, that's financial for this week. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I think we've got one more that we might be closing out the show. I don't know. We might have one more tip that we can squeeze in for you. So stick with us.
We are trying to take this big umbrella term, social competence, and figure out what are the components. How does a child become socially competent? What do people pay attention to? For example, in looking at a face, what do they look at? Do they look at the eyes primarily? Do they follow other people where other people are looking as a socially meaningful thing? So we take some sort of basic research research and try to figure out this question of how people become, children in particular, become socially competent adults.
So what's one takeaway from the kinds of things that you guys are doing that we can tell parents at home?
Okay, well, I would say it's really important to try to start as early as possible to put the social development at the forefront. I think that it actually outweighs some of the other more cognitive issues that kids are dealing with. Your IQ can be, through the roof, and it's not going to make as much of a difference. The overall sort of quality of life that children have is being able to navigate the social world, being able to make friends, being able to be connected, and that in the long term will have a greater impact, I think.
Welcome back to Autism Live. From time to time, we talk about adaptive skills that our children need to learn in order for them to be successful in life. They're really important adaptive skills because not only does it help them to be more independent and help them to be more age appropriate, it's a matter of pride. It really is. And I know that some people kind of poo-poo that and say, oh, kids with autism, they don't really have a sense of that. I say, you know what? I don't agree with you. All you have to do is see a child on the autism spectrum, learn an adaptive skill, and be reinforced for it, and you see a child that their enjoyment of it is more than the reinforcement. I really honestly believe that they start to feel a sense of themselves and the pride in themselves that they can do it. When I'm around neurotypical kids, it's always shocking to me now, having gone, I was always around neurotypical kids before, but now after having gone through what we went through with my son, I'm amazed at how pushy they are, that they go through a phase where the neurotypical kids where they go, I do it. And I certainly didn't experience that with my son. He maybe was pushing me out of the way, but he couldn't say I do it, so I didn't know it was that he wanted to do it, if that's what was happening. But we were behind on adaptive skills, really behind when we started ABA therapy, and it's a tremendous thing to be able to watch your child gain skills and start to take responsibility for themselves and their body and the environment around them. It's really a very exciting thing. And so from time to time we talk about individual adaptive skills and how we can set ourselves up for success to teach them and at greater success. So today I wanted to talk about fastening and unfastening, and in particular, buttons and that kind of thing, but we can include zippers in this, that it's a key part of dressing and undressing, and it's a key part of toileting, because if you can't unbutton your pants, accidents are likely to happen, right? You could be standing there feeling like I gotta go, but if you can't get it off, it's really going to be hard. So it's an area that has big repercussions in lots of different ways. And it's great because it can ultimately be a stress reduction thing, because when the child can dress themselves, it leaves us room to be doing other things as well, right? So definitely an area that we want to work on with all of our kids, fastening and unfastening with fasteners. So here are some different tips that we put together for you, that when you're working on these kinds of things, it's always better to start with whatever the fastener is not already on their person. Think about this for a second. And believe me, as soon as you hear this, you go, well, of course, but I didn't know this going into it. But how much easier is it for someone to be able to see the zipper on the pair of jeans as it's laying on the bed and practicing zipping and clipping the little thing down and unzipping it, right? Because they have visual on it, as opposed to sitting and looking at it on themselves this way and having to be hunched over and physically what it's doing to them. So we always want to start with these kinds of things in a place where they can be looking at it directly and be physically comfortable, and really practice it and give lots of opportunities to practice it in that way before we have an expectation of them being successful doing it with a limited view. And if you stop and think about it, how many articles of clothing do our kids have, and how many articles of clothing do we have where we can't get any visual? The zipper that's in the back of the skirt that you have to put on, that makes it really difficult. And we got good at that through practice, right? Well, same thing for our kids. Now, you can do this in lots of different ways. You literally can take the pair of jeans and put them on the bed, and you don't have to make anything new or do anything new, but the child can see it, and you can practice the zipping and reinforcing the right movement. Eventually, you're going to have to, you know, then you can turn it around and maybe don't put it on the child and have them do it with it turned around so that they get the feel of, oh, my hand has to actually be in a different configuration when I'm on it, but they're still able to hold it outside from themselves and eventually work towards it being on their body. But one of the other things that I have here, actually the first thing that I have, is really ideal when you can to practice larger than life. So that one of the things that I remember when we were working on buttons with my son, my mom, who's a sewer and a quilter and all those things, I said, could you make me a vest that has some really huge buttons on it and really huge buttonholes so that I set him up for success? That there's no, and make the buttonholes, cut the buttonholes bigger than the buttons so that he's going to be able to figure this out and do this. And, you know, we just took some muslin or some leftover fabric, whatever, and some leftover buttons and did that. So there wasn't a huge cost, and it took my mother, who sews, a very short period of time. You can find this in toys, you can find it in coats, you can do it in that kind of thing, but practice it larger than life and then scale it down to what the average size things are. Practice it often and plan for generalization. So like we did the buttons on the vest, and the vest was only useful for a couple of days and then we gave it to somebody else to use. And then we made one that had lots of different kinds of buttons, and the shank buttons and the hole buttons. So make sure you plan for generalization, that it's got to be all different kinds of buttons, not one kind and one color, and reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. Make them know how proud you are of them and reward them for doing these great skills. It's going to make it really worthwhile for toileting and so many other things. School's going to be easier when they can fasten and unfasten. All right, we're out of time. But as this show ends, the conversation continues. Please give us your suggestions and comments. Emily's going to show you some of those different ways that you can get a hold of us, most especially through email. I want to remind you that tomorrow is a very big day here. We're going to have Evelyn Gould's going to be with us, a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. Then at 11 o'clock, we're going to have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We have a special guest who's going to be joining us, a mom who is very involved with the Autism Research Institute. That they have a conference that's coming up that we're going to be going to that talks about a wide variety of research about our children and all kinds of great things. So that'll be at 11 o'clock tomorrow. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.